Right, welcome again. Let's continue chapter 12, thermodynamic property relations, lecture number 8. In previous class, we discussed fundamental mathematical relations that are frequently used in thermodynamics. One of them was simple differential, partial derivative, and then the total differential. And then we derived two very important relations. One of them was cyclic relations and then reciprocity relations. And we also solved couple of numerical problems related to those topics that were discussed in the previous class. Now, in this class, we are going to discuss again one of the very important topic, Maxwell relations. So what are basically Maxwell relations? Maxwell relations are the mathematical equations that relate partial derivatives of the properties, pressure, volume, temperature, and entropy of a simple compressible systems to each other. So they call the Maxwell relations. We can obtain Maxwell relations from the four Gibbs equations by exploiting the exactness of the differentials of thermodynamic properties. Now let's start with the fundamental first law of thermodynamics. We know that from the first law, dq is equal to dw plus delta u. Let's say this is equation 1. And also from the second law of thermodynamics, we know that if we assume that there is no entropy generation, then change of the entropy is equal to dq by dt. From here we can obtain dq. dq is equal to tds. So we can have, for the first law, we can get that value of the delta q out of this, which is equal to tds, whereas the dw, right, we can put in equation 1. So we'll have TDS is equal to dW plus delta U, whereas dW is equal to PdV. So from the first law, then the change in internal energy will be equal to dq minus dW, and we can put the value of the dq as well as dW, and then we'll get du is equal to TdS minus PdV. So that's called the first Gibbs equation, right? Change in entropy is equal to TdS minus PdV. We also know from the enthalpy, that's equal to internal energy plus PV. So if we take the derivative on both sides, we'll have delta H is equal to delta U plus PdV plus VdP. And here we know that from this relation that delta U, we can replace here that delta U, we'll replace that delta U, we put that value here, then the delta H will be equal to TdS plus VdP. So that's called the second Gibbs equation, right? The first Gibbs equation is in terms of delta U, right? And the second Gibbs equation is in terms of delta H. And now we can use to further function. One of the function is we call the Helmholtz function A, which is the difference of the internal energy minus the product temperature and entropy. So that's called the Helmholtz function. Now again, that's kind of a function. Function of internal energy and the product Ts. If we take the derivative of this function, Helmholtz function, then we'll get dA is equal to du minus tds minus sdt. And if we simplify, we know that value d minus tds here. If we put that value, then we'll get dA is equal to minus sdt minus pdv. So that's called the third Gibbs equation, right? We have another function, we call that the Gibbs function, that's represented with value small g, which is the difference of the enthalpy minus Ts. The difference between the Helmholtz function and Gibbs function is here, that's the difference of internal energy minus Ts. Here, that's the difference of the enthalpy minus Ts. Again, if we take the derivative on both sides, we'll have dg is equal to dH minus TdS minus sdt. Again, we can put that value from this equation, right? Delta H minus GDS. If we put that equation and if we simplify, we'll get a new equation. That's called the fourth Gibbs equation. So we have four Gibbs equation: first Gibbs equation, second Gibbs equation, third one, and the fourth Gibbs equation. So we can utilize these four Gibbs equation that we derived from the previous slide. We know in previous lecture we derived this generalized form of the total differential, that dz was equal to mdx plus ndy, whereas m was equal to partial derivative of m with respect to y when x is equal to constant, and similarly n was equal to partial derivative of n with respect to x when y was equal to constant. Now if you carefully look, now this general form of the equation is the same as the above four equation. I mean, let's say the first term, let's say dg is, let's suppose, dz, and m is, let's say, minus s, and dx plus n is this variable, let's say dp is this variable. So basically we have three d value differential. One is, let's say, dz, then we have dx, then we have dy. So here we have dg, dt, dp. Similarly on the above equation we have dA, dt, dv. Similarly here we have dh, ds, dp. Similarly here we have du, ds, dv. So that means we can transfer these four equations into this form, right? The same way, like the first one is m, we have to take the partial derivative of m with respect to y, and then partial derivative of n with respect to x. So that means, so let's say in the first equation, how can we write down? The first equation will be partial derivative of t, partial derivative of t with respect to v, and similarly that should be equal to partial derivative of p with respect to s with respect to t. I mean, we have to take that. I mean, first of all, partial derivative of t with respect to v, and similarly partial derivative of p with respect to s, right? So that should be equal. I mean, same way as we written for the m and n. So we got one equation. Similarly, we can write down for this one, I mean, partial derivative of t with respect to p, that should be equal to partial derivative of v with respect to s, right? Similarly for this one, we can write down partial derivative of s with respect to v. Similarly, that should be equal to partial derivative of p with respect to t, that should be equal. I mean, these signs we have to take into account, because here we have positive, but sometime in the equation we have negative. Similarly, we have here negative and here negative, so negative, that will be cancelled out, so we'll get positive sign here. And similarly for the first equation, we can also write down partial s by partial p, that should be equal to partial v by partial t, and again here we have negative, so one of them will carry negative sign. So these four equations, they are known as Maxwell relations. These Maxwell relations are extremely valuable in thermodynamics because they provide a means of determining the change in entropy, which cannot be measured directly by simple making the changes in properties of pressure, specific volume and temperature. However, Maxwell relations are limited to simple compressible systems only, right? So you can see, I mean, we have a wide range of the relationship. For example, this relationship is between the temperature and volume and pressure and entropy at isentropic process as well as the constant volume process. Similarly here, that's a relationship between temperature, pressure, volume, entropy at isentropic process and at isobaric process. Similarly, this is for the isothermal process, relation between isothermal process and constant volume process. Similarly, we have constant temperature process, constant pressure process. So you can see the Maxwell relation can provide you a fundamental base for driving many other relationships, because it gives you a wide range of processes starting from the isentropic, constant volume, constant pressure and constant temperature, right? So let's try to apply the Maxwell equation for driving the Clapeyron equation. Now Clapeyron equation, as I mentioned in the beginning, basically that is used to describe the enthalpy of phase change process from the knowledge of pressure, volume and temperature data alone. So if we know the directly measurable property, which is pressure, volume and temperature, we can calculate the value of enthalpy of phase change. So that's called the Clapeyron equation. Now we can derive this equation from the Maxwell equation. Since the Maxwell equation have four different equations, so let's take the third equation, right? So this equation can be used to derive the Clapeyron equation. Third equation, I mean from the previous slide, the third equation. This equation is basically the relationship between pressure, temperature at constant volume. That should be equal to the relation between entropy, volume at constant temperature. Now you already know for the phase change process. For example, phase change process you study in steam power plant, and in the previous chapter 11, in the refrigeration system. During the phase change process, the temperature, we use the term saturated temperature and saturated pressure. Now the saturated temperature depends on saturated pressure. Similarly, saturated pressure depend on saturated temperature only. So basically you might observe that if for a complete phase change process, the pressure remains constant and they are dependent on each other. However, they are independent of the specific volume. So from this equation, we can rewrite that saturated pressure is a function of saturated temperature only, right? And this term we can write down this as total derivative, because that's like a only they depend on temperature only. So instead of writing V here, we can write saturated, because that's for the phase change process. This term can be modified for the phase change process. So this should be saturated one. So if we look carefully on the PT curve of the phase change, this curve you study in the thermodynamics 1, where we have three different phases: vapor, liquid and solid. So let's say for the phase change process, let's say at any temperature, let's say this is the T saturated temperature. So for this T saturated temperature, if we take a curve on the PT curve, then that means that will be a derivative now. That's a slope. So slope is a constant. So for given temperature, this term is a slope of the PT curve. So that's a constant value. So the slope of the saturated curve on the PT diagram is a constant at constant temperature or pressure. So this term is a constant one. So this means this slope is independent of the specific volume, and thus it can be treated as constant. So this is a constant one. So let's say if we take the integration of this term, let's say we put integration in this side as well as integration in this side, let's say, right? So this is basically constant, and let's say this dV comes on this side, and here we have the, let's say, partial s, and the integration is from F to G, right? From F to G, because the phase change process is from saturated liquid to saturated vapor. And then if we simplify, then for this one we'll have Sg minus Sf, and for volume on other side we'll have Vg minus Vf. So if we further simplify this slope, which is a constant one, dP by dt, which is like a derivative of pressure with respect to temperature for the phase change process, that is equal to Sf. This is basically Sfg. Similarly, this is Vfg. So here we got that equation, right? So we also know that during the phase change process, pressure remains constant. You might observe in the refrigeration system as well as in the steam power plant that during the phase change process, pressure remains constant. So from that equation, from the second Gibbs equation, if the pressure is constant, then we can neglect this term, right? We can neglect this term, right? And if we take the integration, integration from F to G, from saturated liquid to saturated vapor on both sides, then we can have this one will be HFG, because HFG means Hg minus Hf. Similarly here we will have SFG. So we can replace this value SFG with this one. So SFG is basically HFG divided by T. So if we substitute in equation 2, this is equation 2. So if you substitute that, we'll get dP by dt at saturated state, we'll get HFG divided by T Vfg. So that's called the Clapeyron equation. So if we carefully see that Clapeyron equation, we can calculate the value of enthalpy of phase change at given temperature, because if we know that temperature, let's say temperature is, let's say 50 degrees C, so at 50 degrees C we can get this curve from the PT curve, I mean at given temperature. Similarly, we can calculate the saturated volume of the saturated liquid at that temperature. Similarly, volume of the saturated vapor at that given temperature. So we can calculate the value of enthalpy of the phase change, right? Okay. Now, the Clapeyron equation is applicable to any phase change process that occurs at constant temperature and pressure. So we can express this equation as a general form. For example, instead of writing HFG, because that's a phase change between saturated liquid and saturated vapor, similarly saturated vapor, saturated liquid, so we can write a subscript 1 2, so that represented basically two phases. So one represented one phase to indicate another phase. So this is a general form of the Clapeyron equation. Now we can further simplify this Clapeyron equation for liquid vapor or solid vapor, because that's called the sublimation process. This is another phase change process. This is called, that can be evaporation, right? And it can be condensation. So there are several phase change processes. So we can further simplify that Clapeyron equation with some approximations. So if we adopt certain approximation, we can further simplify this equation. One of the approximation is, at low pressure, specific volume of the vapor is much higher than the specific volume of the saturated liquid, right? So that means we can ignore Vf. So that means since Vfg is equal to Vg minus Vf, so that's minus Vf. So if Vf is very small, so we can ignore that, right? We can ignore that. So as a result, Vfg will be approximately equal to Vg. And the second approximation is, now if we treat those vapors, these saturated vapor, as ideal gas, so we can apply ideal gas equation to calculate the value of Vg. So Vg will be equal to RT by P. So if we put this value of Vg here in the Clapeyron equation, first of all we have to replace the Vfg with Vg, and then we have to put the value of the Vg from the ideal gas equation, I mean this value, and then we'll get a new simplified form that of the Clapeyron equation, PHFG divided by RT square, right? And if we separate the variable, let's say we have dP and we have pressure. So if we separate, and similarly we have delta T, we have T square. So if we separate dP by P and dt by T square, and if we take integration on both sides, let's say from phase 1 to phase 2 on both sides, and then we'll get ln P2 by P1 at saturated state, that's approximately equal to HFG by R 1 by T1 minus 1 by T2 for the saturated state. So here you can see even the Clapeyron equation can give you a relationship between the two states, but those two states are the state of the phase change. Let's say the one state could be the saturated liquid state, another could be saturated vapor state. So the pressure, even sometimes the pressure may be different, right? We can extrapolate. In other words, we can extrapolate the data. I mean, if we know certain data at state 1, let's say at state 1, right, we can extrapolate data at state 2 if we know the value of the HFG, because for small temperatures, the value of the enthalpy of the phase change can be treated as constant. I mean, we can take the average value, I mean the constant value for small delta T. So this is again a very useful equation. So in short, Clapeyron equation have two major applications. The previous equation, I mean with two approximation, we call the Clapeyron-Clausius equation, right? So Clapeyron-Clausius equation has two major application. One of the application is it is used to determine the variation of saturation pressure with the temperature, or in other words, we can determine the enthalpy of the phase change, right? And the other one is, it can also be used, we can extend that for this solid vapor region, or if we replace HFG with HIG, because we have adopted certain approximation, two major approximation. One of them is at low pressure the VG is much higher than VF, so as a result VFG is equal to VG. The second approximation is if we apply the ideal gas equation, then we can calculate the value of VG. So if we put that value, then we'll get Clapeyron-Clapeyron equation. So from Clapeyron-Clapeyron equation, not only we can determine the value of HFG, we can also extrapolate the data. We can calculate the unknown saturated pressure or unknown saturated temperature. We'll solve one numerical problem. I hope you'll understand that. So let's try to apply these fundamental equation what we have learned up till now. Let's say first of all, verify and validate the Maxwell equation. So let's say this is one of the Maxwell equation, and verify this for steam which is available at, let's say, 250 degrees C and 300 kilopascal. So if the right hand side or if the left hand side is equal to right hand side value, then we'll say that this equation is validated. Now the given temperature is given temperature is 250 degrees C. Similarly, given pressure is 300 kilopascal. So that means we need to figure out the delta P and delta T, right? Because this is a derivative. Similarly, we can approximate this as a derivative. So for delta P, the given pressure is 300 kilopascal. So that means we have to choose two nearest point close to the 300 kilopascal. Similarly, for delta T, we have to choose 2 points from the table which is available nearest to 250 degrees C to get the value of the change in entropy and to get the value of the volume. So this is the given. If we change this approximation, the T is 250 degrees C. We have approximated. Similarly, the pressure is 300 kilopascal. Now the nearest point for the 250 in the available table is, for delta T, temperature is 300 degree C and 200 degree C. Similarly, the available value nearest to the 300 kilopascal is 400 kilopascal and 200 kilopascal. So at 400 kilopascal we can read the value of the entropy. Similarly, for 200 kilopascal we can read the value of the entropy. So these properties are for the steam. Please note down. Similarly, for this specific volume, the nearest temperature 2 point is 300 and 200. So at respective point we can read the value of the specific volume. So if we put the value of the entropy specific volume, we'll see what happens. So, and if we simplify, then we'll get these two values. So you can see on the left hand side we got the minus 0.00165, whereas on the right hand side we got minus 0.00159. So you can see, for the 3 digit, let's say 0.001, the values are accurate. There is a slight difference. That's because of the approximation. We have adopted these approximation. Instead of the 250 degrees C, we have selected the closest point, 300 and 200 degrees C. Now this difference can be reduced if delta T is as small as possible. Instead of 250 degrees C, if we select closest point, let's say 260 and 270, then the answer will be much closer. Similarly, let's say 300 kilopascal, we have selected 400 kilopascal and 200 kilopascal. If we take 310 and 305, so the answer will be much closer. But we are limited for the availability of data from the steam table, because the closest point available is 400 and 200. Similarly, for temperature, the closest point is 300 and 200. So that's why there is a small difference in approximation. And so this was the validity of the Maxwell relation. Now for the to determine the value of the enthalpy of phase change, let's say if we know the data of pressure, volume, temperature, let's say Use the Clapeyron equation. Estimate the value of the enthalpy of vaporization for the refrigerant 134A at 20 degrees C, and then compare this with the actual value. So that means we have to determine the value of the HFG at 20 degrees C. That means we have to calculate this value at 20 degrees C. So at 20 degree we have to calculate the specific volume for saturated liquid and saturated vapor, I mean Vg and Vf at given temperature, and similarly we have to figure out the slope at given temperature. So at 20 degrees C we have to calculate three different values. One of them is Vf, and then Vg, and then the slope, right? So from table A11 we can get the value of Vg as well as Vf at 20 degrees C. So if we put those values we can get Vfg, and similarly we need to calculate the value of this slope at 20 degrees C. So to get the value of the slope at 20 degrees C we need the closest point which are available in the table, I mean closest point to 20 degrees C. The closest point is 16 and 24. So at these 2 points we have to figure out the value of the pressure, and similarly at 16 degrees C we have to read the value of the pressure. So if we put those values we can get the slope, because this is a slope delta P, that's delta P, and similarly this is delta T. So the closest 2 points we have to select. So that's the value of the slope. So now we know all the three values, right? So if we put these three values in the above equation we'll get the value of the enthalpy. If we simplify that we'll get 182.62 kilojoule per kg. Now if we compare that value with the actual value is 182.33 kilojoule per kg. So that means the difference is between the two value is very small, and that small difference is because of this approximation, because of the availability of data, because the nearest point is 24 and 16. So if we further reduce the delta T, let's say the nearest point if available is, let's suppose 21 and 22, right? So we can minimize the error, because the condition for the derivative is delta T should be approaching to 0. That means it should be as small as possible, then the value will be accurate. Now the third application of the Clapeyron equation is extrapolating the tabular data. Now suppose estimate the saturation pressure of refrigerant 134A at -15 Fahrenheit using the data available in the refrigerant table. Now in the refrigerant table, and the property table of R134A, the data available is up to minimum data available is -40 Fahrenheit. I mean if you look at that now if you look at the property data available, you will see that the minimum data available is this table is for the SI unit. I mean the similar table is available for the British unit. In that table the minimum temperature available is -40 Fahrenheit, but in this problem we need to calculate for -50 Fahrenheit. To calculate that temperature, that means you can use this valuable property relation which we call Clapeyron equation to extrapolate the data. Now for this case we know P1 is at T1, the saturated pressure at temperature T1, which is available from the data, which is -40 Fahrenheit, and similarly P1 is the corresponding temperature at this temperature, and T2 is the temperature at which we have to figure out the saturated pressure, which is -50 Fahrenheit. So the only unknown here is P2, whereas we can calculate this constant HFG and average HFG if the delta T is very small. So from the table we know the T1 is -40 Fahrenheit, T2 is the point where we need to calculate the pressure, and then at minus 40, we have the value of HFG. We can use that constant value, and P1 is the pressure, saturated pressure at corresponding temperature minus 40 Fahrenheit. And then if we put all the values, the only unknown is P2, right? So we can calculate that P2 by using Clapeyron equation. So that's called the extrapolating the data. I mean, the data which is not available in the table, we can calculate that by using, we can estimate that by using Clapeyron equation. Now from some other sources, if we check that value was a 5.506 psi. So that means the calculated, the approximated value is 5.56, whereas the actual value is a 5.506. So the error is about 1%. So that means Clapeyron equation is a very useful tool to extrapolate or to estimate unknown value that are not available in the table by using extrapolation. So that's the end of this lecture. If you have any question, you can ask me question on Microsoft Teams, or you can send me email. See you in the next class.